today's world, most people are wage dependent. We are dependent on being paid a wage by an employer. So dependent that without this wage, we cannot afford our survival needs for food and housing. And to receive this wage, you must work for an employer and allow yourself to be exploited. In earlier eras before capitalism, when most people lived off the land and used it to provide themselves with food and shelter, this land was often owned by elites such as lords or chiefs. And these elites only let you use that land if you paid them. Sometimes the payment would be currency, but more often payment in crops or labor. This relationship between the ruling class and the laboring class was one of dependency and exploitation, just like it is today. This dependency and exploitation, whether ancient or modern, is due to the fact that a ruling class own and control the means of production, which includes not just the land that grows food, but all the productive resources in the economy. And because the ruling class has a near monopoly on this ownership, this means the working class does not have access to economically productive resources. If we did have these resources, we could provide ourselves with food, housing, and whatever else we need. But since we don't, we have to work for the people who own everything. It's hard to think of a power imbalance more extreme than depending on someone for food, shelter, and other survival needs. And this is exactly the power that the ruling class has over the working class. And the problem with this is that the more power someone has over you, the more they can use that power to exploit you and constrain your freedom. This was the focus of my video, How We Lost Our Freedom. But unfortunately, and to my great regret and dismay, I forgot to make an extremely important point in relation to all this. And because of this, I made our situation seem much more dire and much more hopeless than it actually is. What I completely failed to point out is that the ruling class, whether it's the capitalist class or lords or whoever the hell it is, that they are also dependent on us. They're dependent on those who they exploit. After all, it's only because we work for them that they are able to make profit or enrich themselves. In capitalism, this is because the wage they pay their employees is only a fraction of the value that those employees produce by working. The rest the employer keeps. Some money is reinvested in the business, and everything else is profit for the owners. In other words, the money that the ruling class makes, for the most part, does not come from their own labor. It comes from the labor of their employees. So if we stopped working for them, they wouldn't be able to make a single dollar, not a single goddamn penny. They have nothing without us. So there's a dual dependency here, right? A dependency that goes in both directions. We depend on them for a job so that they pay us a wage, and they depend on us to work for them so that we can make them profit. This dual dependency means that not only do they have power over us, but we also have power over them, at least potentially. The power of the working class is a latent power, a sleeping power, a power that can only be awakened if we organize and act together in a coordinated way. If our power reaches its full potential, it can literally overthrow and abolish the entire system of class exploitation, right? The system of ownership, which puts economically productive resources into the hands of a ruling elite. To put it simply, it can be the driving thrust of a revolutionary transformation of society. But if someone being dependent on you means that you have power over them due to their dependency, and if there is a dual dependency between the working class and the ruling class, with each class dependent on the other, then why is it that the power relationship does not also go both ways? In other words, why does the ruling class have such extreme power over the working class, and meanwhile, the power of the working class only exists as a not yet realized potential? The reasons are varied and complex, but I think there are two main reasons that are of particular importance. One reason is because the ruling class controls the state, and in particular the police and military and prison system. And this is a very powerful means of organized violence. And by contrast, the working class does not have any organized means of violence to rival the power of the state. This is the main way that the ruling class is able to claim ownership over the world's economic resources while disenfranchising everyone else. Because if we try to reclaim some of these resources for ourselves, they can just use the violence of their police and prisons to stop us, and we have no way to effectively fight back. Which is why, in order to put an end to this domination and grotesque inequality, the state itself must be abolished. And just to be very clear, I don't think that the working class should create its own state, but should instead create structures of power that are non-hierarchical and characterized by equality. Okay, so that's one reason why the power imbalance currently favors the ruling class, because they control a means of organized violence and we don't. And the other main reason is because the ruling class is very well organized while the working class is not. For the ruling class, their main hub of organization is, once again, the state. And this includes not just the apparatus of violence of the state, but also their decision-making bodies, such as, parliaments or congresses, and other decision-making bodies of government, and also the executive bodies of government, and all their various departments, and so on. And they also have other organizations that empower them beyond the state. Everything from think tanks and lobbying groups to international institutions such as the World Bank and the World Trade Organization. By being so well organized, the ruling class is able to act in a unified or at least coordinated way. And meanwhile, due to the working class not being organized at all, we are only able to act as individuals, with no ability to coordinate our actions and thus to harness our power. Now, I don't want to oversimplify the process of revolutionary transformation, right? Creating working class organization and power is definitely not the only ingredient in this recipe, but it's almost certainly an essential part of it. So now you can see why I regret forgetting to say all this in the video How We Lost Our Freedom, because by leaving out this side of the story, I leave out the side that actually gives us hope for overcoming our current situation. I only emphasized the fact that the ruling class has power over us and has made us dependent, but left out the fact that actually they are dependent on us too. And so if we organize to act in a coordinated way, we can be the ones with the power. But the goal of this power is not to reverse things and make them the ones who are now exploited and dominated. No. The goal is to abolish all forms of power that enable exploitation and domination in our economic and political systems. In other words, the goal is to create a world where people can be equal and free. So, if you'd like to learn more about this and want more information on the potential power of the working class to create revolutionary transformation in society, feel free to check out my video, Power to End Capitalism: The Case for Workplace Organizing. And if you're curious about what kind of economic system could replace capitalism without creating an authoritarian system like existed in the USSR, because, that would just give us more exploitation and domination rather than liberate us from it, then you can check out my video, Post-Capitalism, a detailed look at how it could work. And if you'd like further explanation of what I meant when I said that rather than building a new state, we should build revolutionary power structures that are non-hierarchical and characterized by equality, I discuss this in one of the chapters of my video, The Socialist Political Compass: Methods to Create Socialism. That section of the video starts at 57 minutes and 12 seconds and lasts for about 18 minutes. So a very brief discussion, but I will expand on this topic in future videos. And if you want to learn some tips that will help you be more effective and successful in your organizing and activism to create a better world, then I have 2 other videos that can be of use. One is called How to Grow a Movement: Tips for Activists and Organizers. And the other is called Self-Governing the Commons: Survive Apocalypse, build a better world. Now, for the video Self-Governing the Commons, most of it is not exactly relevant to this topic of learning to organize more successfully, so if that's all you're interested in, then just watch Chapter 3 of the video, which begins at 19 minutes and 27 seconds into the video and is about half an hour long. Okay, thank you for watching this video. I hope you're all doing really well. And please remember to love yourself and each other. Bye-bye.